now let's head on the line between life and death.
Let's keep playing music.
Okay, so I'm going to begin going through my mix process. I'm not going to do exactly what I did on the music that's already out, but I'll go through sort of my general thing, and I'm not going to be super complex with it. I'm just going to kind of go through. There are two ways to kind of think about mixing, or like two directions. One is vertical and one is horizontal. So horizontal is when you're kind of analyzing different sections of the music and you're determining how one thing flows into another or how things change over time. I'm really just going to be worrying about the effects on top of the vocals. So here's the instrumental.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me almost instantly.
And I'm not really going to worry about a lot of stuff other than just that. Like the very beginning part and maybe the chorus. So here's kind of what it sounds like when the vocals are just kind of there.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me almost instantly. And I can guarantee that she
has heard about me through her girlfriend.
And I'm muting one of the vocalists because I haven't gotten her explicit permission to use her voice. Okay, so here's kind of the first line.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me.
The first thing you kind of want to do is well, I've already done some of the sort of second step, but you kind of want to compile everything. This is the main vocals. This is the one of the four vocalists. And generally, for the main vocals, you don't want anything to overlap. Here, in this specific overlap, I thought it sounded better than each one individually, so I kind of just kept it. And I kind of just group everything together in one folder. So here's that folder. The first thing you want to do is kind of reduce noise. So one of the most important things to do with that is to high pass everything so that there's no rumbling or, like if a truck goes by, then it will cause rumbling. If a fan is going off in the background in another room or something, it'll cause rumbling. If footsteps happen, it will cause rumbling. So this is just a very easy way to get rid of that. And then you kind of want to volume automate everything. So I've already done that, but the general process for that is that these things start off at different volumes, and you can visually see the differences. I'm going to just put these close to 0. So in just this section, you can see that it's medium, medium, small, and then large. And so what I did with all those changes, I normalized each one of these sections. And then with my sort of ear, I listened to them and made sure they flowed together.
It's not your fault, you can't compare.
So originally the volume would be a little bit all over the place.
Not your fault, you can't compare.
So that last line in particular, pretty loud. So you want to just keep everything at sort of the same level while still making it sound like the same take or cohesive. Because there are certain places where you try to make everything match. So right here, if I made these things match, it probably would sound weird. Otherwise, I would have made them match.
Friends do.
So there's like this pulsating thing at the end of Friends that seems unnatural. So I put those volumes back down.
It's not my fault she looked at me.
And because I have different vocalists, and even if you have the same vocalist, you're gonna have different sections. Maybe different takes are happening. And I kind of struggled for a little while trying to understand how I can normalize everything to the same extent. Because if you just normalize everything and make sure it goes to 0, like the peaks go to 0, the loudness doesn't really compare. So what I do is I kind of highlight each section. I do render and okay, this can be seen. And then I click dry run for the selected track for the time selection. And then in Reaper right now, it shows you the luffs that happen, which is just a loudness indicator. So I believe these were at something like -20 luffs. And so I just kind of went with the first number I got, and I just made sure all the numbers match that. So I did that for this section. You can be pretty lazy about this, I think, because the compression later on will kind of even things out anyway. But you just kind of go through that sort of process several times over, click dry run every time. If it's at -20, great. If it's at -15, then you lower it by 5 decibels, and that'll get it to -20. And you just keep doing that, and it's kind of tedious. I'm not sure if I need to do it, but I did it. And then I sort of manually listened to some of these sections in the context of the music, and I determined that it was too loud. So I lowered the decibels again. And so it turns out that precision doesn't matter that much anyway, but it can be nice to know that the volumes were different throughout, or sorry, consistent throughout, and know what that is supposed to be. So it's nice to start at that and then deviate when it sounds off, rather than not really know if different sections compare well to each other. So what I did is I rendered that for each of the vocalists so that it wasn't all cut up like this, with all these splits everywhere and such.
I stepped in the room and she.
And then you might want to go through, and this can happen at any point really, but you want to go through and make sure that certain sections sound fine, because there might just be weird things happening. So for this line, the S's were very prominent. And to kind of combat that, I used a transient shaper. Actually, maybe it was a background noise thing.
Step, step, step.
Maybe you can hear it better. I'll just play with and without.
Step, 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 step.
Yeah, so the S was kind of carrying through the whole line, and I didn't really like that. I think maybe a low pass could have worked as well, just getting rid of that S, but I moved it to a different track so that I could apply its own special effect to it. And I've done that with a few things. It seems like I did it with this line here too, but I don't know what I did to it. Well, anyway, I put it all in this one folder. Let me actually show you my slideshow, because I made a slideshow. So the acronym for it, because it was a mashup between Guys Don't Like Me and Angel with a Shotgun, it was Guys Don't Like Angels with Shotguns. Okay, here's kind of the whole thing all together. This is kind of what you want to do to everything. I'm not sure it makes sense to just overload you with this, like why I do every specific thing before I even show you what it is. So I'm just gonna go through things one at a time. So the first thing was reduce noise and then fix issues, which I kind of went through. So now what we're gonna do is compress. And I have a mechanical keyboard. I cannot fully get rid of that sound. I kind of wish I could.
Notice me almost instantly.
And I don't really have a good idea of what to aim for with this first compression, but generally you just want to well, I compress at various times throughout this process, and I just think that compressing little tiny bits at various different steps of the process is better than compressing all at once for just one step.
Notice me almost instantly, and I can guarantee that. Notice me almost instantly.
So I'm just affecting Mish's vocals here. I'm only really going to work with one vocalist at a time because their settings are going to be different. They have different mics, they have different voices. They're just different specific details that are different, so you have to treat them differently.
Notice me. Notice me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the.
Okay, so what the attack does is it tells you how much of the noise is going to happen, well, how much of the kind of consonants in the voice are going to happen before the compression actually happens. And compression I'm going to get paint out. So what compression does is, so on the left, I'm going to have the start. You're going to have something maybe like this. As your waveform, and compression is going to turn it into something a little bit less sharp. So this little section will end up being bigger, and these peaks will be closer together. And then if you want to match the loudness, so this is compression. If you don't want things to get quieter, you do makeup gain. And it'll make sure like the end of this is the same loudness as the end of this. And maybe if you're trying to match peaks, you can do it that way. I'm not going to draw the gain. It'll just essentially be the middle picture, but a little bit wider up and down. So that's kind of what I'm doing here with the attack and release. It changes the shape slightly, and I don't know. I'm not sure if you do it a little bit over time. I'm not really sure what attack and release you really want, but just see what the difference is and then pick your preference. If you don't have a preference, then as long as you're compressing, that's probably a good thing.
Notice me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed.
Okay, so when that effect is off, the vocals are louder. So I need to do makeup gain.
Notice me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me.
So that's approximately the same volume. You kind of want to keep the same volume throughout. You want to keep the vocals in a specific kind of range of, I don't know, temperate range of certain different stats, and throughout the process you kind of want to tame that and just keep it in place. So compression does that with volume. And then another thing that compression can do, which I'll just demonstrate later, is glue different things together in terms of how it sounds. So it turns two separate things into more of a cohesive whole when you put it on both of them, when two tracks are going into the same folder. Okay, and then EQ. So EQ is the thing that took me kind of the longest to understand why you would ever do it. But I'll show you what EQ does, and then I can go over the why. So the thing that I use to help me with EQ, it's Ozone Elements, but I'm only really using the EQ function. The Reaper EQ doesn't really do this super well, what I'm about to do. Oops. So what I'm doing is putting brick wall EQs, brick wall high passes and low passes on this. So if I play the music, you're only going to hear a specific frequency range.
I stepped in the room. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she.
So it's kind of like a filter. It's like if you see a color, it's like breaking it up into how much R there is and G there is and B there is. But there's more to it than that. It's there's like an amount of noise going through every sort of frequency range. So low frequencies are like thumps, like kicks, and then high frequencies, well, middle frequencies are more sort of tonal sounding things. And then on the top end for vocals, it's a lot of sort of S sounds and like hi-hats for the instrumental. Okay, so I'm gonna go through what I do to EQ each voice. Okay, I thought I already did this, but put a high pass on each of these things. You want to high pass before you compress. Oh, I put the high pass on the thing I deleted. Because the thumping and whatever going on is going to affect this compression. The compression will respond to a truck passing by and compress differently. So you want to high pass before you compress so that it's only reacting to the voice itself. So that's why I have an EQ before with the high pass, and then I'll have an EQ afterward. And then I'll put an EQ kind of on the instrumental. And what I'll do is I'll go from low to high. Okay, so there you only really hear a very, very small amount of vocals. And so you could just get rid of all the stuff in the vocals below a certain frequency. So maybe like 150. And you can kind of be pretty safe doing this. Over time, when you kind of increase the loudness of things, then these little details will come out. And so I don't think it really hurts to just keep high passing, but it might hurt for little tiny bits of low end to come through the vocals. So I kind of just do this if it comes up, but it's not really a necessity, I don't think. And now I'm going to reveal the part of the spectrum that actually has vocals. So I only really know this from listening to other music through this kind of lens, where I put it under this filter of sorts, where you're only revealing frequencies from 200 to 500. But if you listen to various songs that you like, you might find patterns in what's happening. So I'm going to play some of this song with these on, and I'm just going to listen to how the vocals compare to the instrumental. I'm going to see which one's kind of louder. And I do that for every kind of vocal, or every frequency range. So you couldn't really understand what the vocals were saying. I mean, it's not in English, but even if it weren't, you couldn't understand what they're saying. So that means that the instrumental is kind of, but you could hear that the vocals were happening. So that kind of means that the instrumental and the vocals were kind of close together. The vocals were not super loud. So I want that to happen with my mix. So I'm going to make that happen with mine with EQ. And what EQ is really doing is lowering or raising the volume in that specific range that you're working in. So if you have I need to go to the part that Mish was singing in. I need to make it repeat. So when I don't do anything to it, it's kind of loud, I think. So I just lower it. One thing to worry about with this kind of process is that right where these 1 and 2 are, these high pass and low passes are, it doesn't visually show you this, but it will increase. I'm like pointing at the screen as if you can see my hand, but it'll increase the exactly at 203 hertz. So there will be sort of resonant things happening right at 200 and right at 565. So make sure that doesn't go into your decision making. What you can do to try to unhear it is move where these are and make sure what you did still kind of makes sense. And for each of these frequency ranges, you can kind of just compare to something you like. I'm not really going to do that so much. I'm just showing you that I do it, and I kind of do it a lot. Now that I'm looking at it, this is kind of a large decrease for the EQ. You kind of want to do smaller changes unless there's a real problem. Since there wasn't really a problem in that range, I'm thinking that this will be too much in the end. But I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to move on to the next frequency range. So if you want loud vocals, then you want to make certain frequency ranges loud, sort of a relative loudness. So you want the vocals to be louder than the instrumental. I had like a good visual for compression that I forgot to do in Paint. I think it's fine. Okay, so for this one, I think something about Mish's mic setup, or potentially about her voice, like it's very prominent in the 3K range. So for her in particular, I kind of just lower the 3K range. In the high frequency range, I've noticed that in songs that I like, the high end of the vocals is maybe slightly quieter than the high end of the instrumental. And for now, I'm gonna ignore the S's. The S's will just always sound bad, always. So I'm gonna do something specifically about those at the end, or near the end. And so for now, I'm just worrying about the parts in between the S's in terms of the volume. And then another thing that I noticed is that I kind of like it when I have this really thin band going downwards somewhere around 1K. And that's something you want to listen to the whole frequency range for. So I'm getting rid of that filter that I put on all the music.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped.
So I find that it gives it a bit of like, I don't know, it makes it a little bit more artificial, I guess, in a sense, but it also makes it sound cleaner.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me.
Okay, so I listened to each of these little bits when making these decisions about what volume these things should be at. And you can have your own reasons for changing the volumes of things. I think there are a lot of different ways you could go about it that are valid. So it comes down to personal preference. It comes down to what kind of music do you like. You could put the filter on that and compare it to what you're working with. And then just try to make the ratios between the voice and the instrumental match with your EQ. So because I was listening to each of these separately, there's sort of this cohesion aspect between the vocals and the instrumental that I'm not taking into account when I'm deciding these things. So
Stepped in the room and she.
What I do is I mess with this wet dry knob because what typically happens is I've ignored the cohesion to the point where it sounds like the vocals plus the instrumental sound too artificial or something. They sound too separated.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me.
Maybe I should. I don't know. I just put it wherever I think sounds nice.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me.
And I maybe should have raised the gain because as you see, I just lowered bands. But I don't typically do that when I do this process because I was listening to each little bit and doing what I thought was best, and what ended up being best was just lowering the volume everywhere.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me.
So I just move this until something sounds good. Over time, I've kind of noticed that I like the results of when I ease off of the dry wet. So I kind of err on the side of making it more dry than wet because things kind of have a domino effect later on and they get, I don't know, little tiny things can really make a big impact at the end. Okay, so that is just normal EQ. Okay, so I have Y all the time in my slideshow for both compression and EQ. So I will do compression and EQ at multiple steps during this process. So you can see it here, and then I will also do it here, and I will do it here. I just do it in a lot of different steps. So you just want to keep things within a specific kind of ideal range for you. You want to make sure you're not deviating too much from your decisions in terms of comparing it to what you like, because these other effects you're going to add are going to change that. And the more of the time that you spend with your mix in a good place in terms of that, the better. Because you'll just deviate less, and then so you'll get it to a good place, and then you'll change it with another effect. And then you want to put it back into a good place, and then you'll change it again, and you put it back into a good place. If you just keep changing it, and it might just go out of control, and then there are certain things that you're not going to know how to fix it that could have just been avoided if you EQ'd and compressed a lot. With the compression, it's not so much of an issue. It can be, but with the compression, it's more of just, I think, compressing it a little bit at different times sounds better than compressing all at once. Okay, the next thing that I do is dynamic EQ on the vocals. And I don't have a good plugin for this. So I do something that's a bit complicated and Reaper specific. I think it demonstrates what's happening though, so I'm still gonna go through it. So what I do, and the more of this you do, the more precise and better sounding it probably will be. I'm only gonna do this a few times. Well, maybe not a few, but like 5 times or something. I'll isolate a frequency range with a band pass. Since the vocals don't start until 200 hertz, I'll just go somewhere between 200 and 500 here. Yeah, so what I'm doing here is I'm taking the part of the vocals that is at 300 hertz and I'm putting them somewhere else. So 1 and 2 are the track channels you hear. They're the left and right. One is left and one is right, and then you hear these. What Reaper allows you to do is make a sort of parallel audio track that you don't necessarily hear at the end. And it lets you do this many times. So you could have at least 64 of these things. I don't usually have 64. I'll go up to maybe 8 at most. But essentially, I'm not hearing 3 and I'm not hearing 4, but it sends the signal at 300 hertz down along the chain so that you can sort of refer to it later, which I'm going to do with this next EQ. I'm going to try to change the name of this, rename. So this process is an implementation of sidechaining. So sidechaining is when you use that alternate audio signal to influence a future audio signal. So the thing that is going to influence is this next EQ. So I'm just going to make it into a band instead of a band pass. And here's where I will use paint to kind of illustrate what's happening. So you might have your original audio signal looking like this. And this contains all the frequencies that go into whatever audio is happening. And so you've compressed this to make it more like a box. And the more something is like a box, the louder it is, and generally the easier it is to work with. And louder usually means it sounds better, at least in pop music. So there are reasons you want this to look more like a box. But if you put a filter on it and just look at 300, it might have random peaks in it. And for vocals, 300 is kind of like a deep part of the range. And anyway, when things are lopsided in the vocals, it just sounds off. And I'm gonna do this multiple times. So I might do this for 1000, so 1K. And then I'll do it later on for high frequencies, so 5K. I'll probably do it for the high end too. But you'll have all these different waveforms that you get out of this thing, and the initial one might look like a box, but each of these individual ones don't. And so what you're doing is when you're going to create a system so that when these peaks happen at these different frequency ranges, you're going to lower the volume here. So you're going to set a certain threshold, and then when the volume passes that threshold, the volume goes down. And so the output of this is going to look a little bit smoother. And these peaks are not going to, you're not going to hear like a little like wub or like wah out of someone's voice as much if you do this kind of thing. And then the volume would go down, so it kind of like pushes this peak downward. And the same thing's happening at the bottom. These waveforms are usually symmetrical. Okay, so how do you actually accomplish this? In Reaper, you can accomplish this. So this band right here is the thing that controls the volume. So the thing that makes it so that it's not just happening all the time and just making the vocals quieter, which is what a regular EQ would do. So 200's already lowering things at 300, but maybe it still peaks past where you want it. Is you use this signal that you've created. You go, so what I like to do is click on the wet knob. So this tells you how much the EQ is actually influencing the signal. Go to parameter, parameter modulation MIDI link. And then you click audio control signal. So sidechain, that's what I was using. It's a commonly used word in, I guess, music production. Okay, so I'm saying we're using the audio channel 3.4, and that's where I put the thing that's only letting through frequencies from 300. So it's saying that this is going to respond to the frequencies from 300, and then I like to have a low attack on this and a low release. Because I kind of want it to, I don't want to allow a little bit of that like wah that will happen at the lower end of the frequency range. I kind of want to just stop it in its tracks.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me. Stepped in the room and
Okay, so when this is working, you're gonna see this little green plus go over here. So the minimum volume needs to go lower because it's not registering anything.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and
So I like to have the min volume just so that it responds, and then the max volume, I have it so that the plus doesn't go all the way to the right hand corner, because then it's not responding to things as a it'll be kind of more all or nothing, rather than you know, if a peak goes over that threshold just a little bit, then you only want to lower the volume a little bit.
stepped in the room and she noticed me.
So once again, what's happening here, this visually shows you the 300 the 300 hertz range that's coming through channels 3 and 4. And then what's happening,
Stepped in the room and she noticed me.
the higher this green thing is up on this diagonal, the more that the dry wet knob goes to the right. So it's getting closer to 100%, which means that this band is affecting the audio more.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me.
And what you can do is, if you don't really hear what's happening, you can apply that EQ filter and go to 300 hertz. It might end up being hard to hear through YouTube or something, but what you can do is just make it very extreme so that there's no way you can't hear it. And then you back off until it's something that you like. Well, that's not having as dramatic of an effect as I thought it would, but there is an audible difference. And over time, you'll be able to tell that more easily.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in.
I'm not going to go through myself just checking what strength is best, but essentially I'd just be turning this filter on and off, trying to hear exactly the difference better, and then once I understand what that difference is, I'll make a decision based off of my preference. And if you don't have a preference, you don't even need to do this. But little tiny changes over time will accumulate into a nice sounding thing at the end. Or at least they can.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and.
If I were to tell you a qualitative thing that's happening here, it would be that the vocals are becoming more under control. So they kind of start off a little bit wild, and you're like bringing the 300 range under control. And I'm just going to do this for different frequencies. I might do it for more frequencies usually. I'm just copy and pasting it essentially. so that I don't have to manually go through all those settings again. And I'll just call this one 1000 hertz. I would probably do more than this if I was spending more time on it. And I wouldn't name it, so I just try to keep it all in my head, but honestly that can get confusing. But I have like pairs of things. They would be called re-EQ. You would just see that over and over again. So I mean, it can be good to rename it so that you don't forget what's happening. And then I just make sure that these frequencies match, and then I go through the same kind of process. Let's see. So this says 300 hertz, so that's not the right parameter link. Parameter modulation. And then you do the same thing here.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me.
If you can't hear what's happening, you can do this kind of deal, and it should help you understand better what's happening.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me.
So for the 1K range, maybe I should be doing less because I already put that notch here. So it's already kind of taming the vocals a bit in that kind of way.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me.
Another thing is that I want to maintain that sort of balance that I came up with at the beginning, where I want 1K for the vocals to be louder than the instrumental. I don't really need to worry about it at this step. Maybe it's something to keep in mind, but I'll EQ again just to make sure that that's done, because what I'm doing here is just removing volume. So I would be doing EQ again later to keep the compression, but essentially do that gain thing that I did for the compression. Where is rename? Okay. Okay, so the reason this actually works, you might be thinking that this is being applied to this one, and you're like putting multiple filters over each other. What's happening is that this one's rewriting the other one, because it's not taking 3/4 and outputting 3/4. It has 1 and 2 as input, so it's taking the full audio and then overwriting channels 3 and 4 with what it's doing to the main audio, the full audio. So every time you have this first one, it overwrites the one that was previously there, which is why I alternate, so that I don't have to make 64 channels. Because if you just put all the filters on, you just want to respond to a specific filter. you don't want the top end to respond to the low end. Well, maybe you would, theoretically, but not generally. So I'm just gonna go close to 5K. Again, I would probably do this, I would do more of this if I were spending more time on it. Oh, and you have to click on the thing that you want to change. So I'm clicking on the dry wet knob here for the 5000 hertz before clicking on this parameter modulation. If you clicked on something else, you would be affecting something else than the dry wet knob. And I think the dry wet knob is better than, say, the gain knob here for the thing that you changed, just because I've done this for a while and it can go way down and then suddenly it changes shape once you get past a certain point, right? So it'll just, it's harder to tame.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me.
Okay, I'm not gonna worry too much about being specific on that, but that's my general process. The one I will do at the end, I will do a high pass and just kind of include all the high frequencies. So my sidechain signal that it's going to respond to is all the high frequencies. And the goal of this one is to DS. So you might have a plugin that DS's pretty well, in which case you don't really need to do this. I do not, so I do this. So it's going to use the high end to tell you when to lower this. And for this, I want it to apply more so because the S's are really unfortunate. I need to click dry wet.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed.
And like, if this isn't de-essing enough for you, it's probably letting a little bit through right now. You kind of want to be cautious about putting it exactly at 0 milliseconds because certain plugins will, actually most plugins will do weird things. It'll move too fast and create a weird like click or something in the audio. If you hear clicks in the audio as a result of something like this or compression, then you probably want to change the attack time to be longer. And I just generally like these to be low.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me.
And then for this one, it's a bit different. You don't want it to respond to everything. You want it to respond to the S's and maybe the T's.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me.
So you can see every time there's an S, this thing is going up.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me. Stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me.
I'm gonna rename this.
stepped in the room and she noticed.
And if it's not doing enough for you, then you can just copy paste.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped.
Okay, and then, well, actually, I do have a plugin that does this, but it does it for kind of a different reason. This one, so I had this picture where I split it up into 300, 1K, 5K, and that's what I ended up doing. What Soothe 2 does is I think it focuses around, yeah, focuses kind of around 5K, because that's where piercing frequencies happen, and then it splits this range up into more pieces, and it does it just to make a sound sound less harsh. So I like to put this on. I'm not sure if I should put it on before the dynamic EQ or after. Generally, if you forgot to do something in a signal chain, it's just better to do it like after what you've already done, because you moved a bunch of knobs in response to, like in these menus, I moved a lot of knobs in response to what was happening. And if I put Soothe 2 on before all of this, that would change what was happening. So I'd have to go back through and do all of these things again. So even if I wanted to do Soothe 2 before all this, I shouldn't at this point unless I want to redo all my work, which I don't. So I'm going to put it on after.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed.
And this knob again is the dry wet knob. I touch this knob all the time for a lot of plugins.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me.
So this will maybe kind of dull the vocal in a sense, but that means that you can increase the volume of the overall song later on in the line.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me.
So I don't know. I think it's fine to have like a little bit of piercing frequencies, because it kind of gives it character. It doesn't make it too processed sounding. Or maybe it does. I don't know. It makes it slightly less processed sounding. Okay, so that's what I do to that. Something I might end up doing is I have this plugin. I don't think I would do it at this point. Maybe I could. This just gives you advice on stuff you can do if you play audio through.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me almost instantly, and I can get. It's not my fault she looked at me. It's not your fault. You can't compare.
And if I were to actually do this, I would have put it maybe over here.
It's not my fault she looked at me. It's not your fault. You can't compare. Are we through with this? It's not my. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed instantly. I stepped in the room and she noticed. noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed.
So sometimes it tells you good things and sometimes it doesn't. I found that, you know, I don't put the equalizer at the full 100. I'll put it somewhere in the middle. So normally I would EQ and then compress again just to tame the whole thing again and compare it back to my references. So I'd compare it to that or something else that was similar to my song. I mean, that song's not similar to this song, but I did reference it when I did the actual thing.
And she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed room and she noticed me. Room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. Room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me.
Okay, and so you could do your own compression and EQ. You could do something like this where it tells you what to do and you just select a wet-dry ratio that you like. You could do both of them next to each other. I found that doing both of them next to each other is nice. But that's kind of it for one vocal if you have multiple singers. And so I would do that process for each singer individually, but I don't really have time for that. So I'm just gonna copy and paste. Everyone has like different voices and different mics, so your settings should be different for each singer.
Room and she noticed me almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she.
So one thing I've noticed, Mish's vocals, I would cut 3K more than other vocals, so maybe I could go to Lean's vocals here. Go to that EQ. You know, you want to listen to it. I'm not going to listen to it. I'm just going to raise this up a little bit or something just to show you that I would change things for different vocalists. And I just do the whole process over again, honestly. And then de-essers might work differently for different vocalists as well, so you want to pay attention to that.
Room and she noticed me almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
Has heard about me through her girlfriend.
Yeah, I can already hear that I'd probably just do different things for each vocalist because Mara's mic sounds different than the other two's. It sounds maybe more warm or something. Right, and then there's saturation. This is something that you can do to the vocals. Usually you just kind of find a plugin that you like to apply to vocals and then you just do it. What I will do is, okay, well, I'll show Fresh Air and how I kind of apply it. I put it before the de-esser actually. I think Fresh Air does like way too much. So I found that if I use it at all, I will put it on 1% wet, 1% high air, and 1% mid air. And if that's it might still be too much. So I'll just remove it completely at that point because I can't actually put smaller numbers in.
Room and she noticed me almost instantly. Room and she noticed. I stepped in the room. I stepped in the room and she noticed me.
So right now it sounds fine. So I'll keep it in, but later down the process, it'll snowball, and turning this thing on and off will have a way bigger difference. Another thing, this is where you kind of want parallel processing. So I'm gonna route Mish's vocals to this track. It might have been 3 that I was listening to when I kind of realized that other people were doing something like this. This is really the only saturator I have besides maybe clipping. So you could maybe clip. This is just a free plugin. This is something I got from Native Instruments. Let's just do the free one.
I stepped in the room and
So what's happening is that this vocal is just being copied here after all the effects that's happened to it. And I'm going to saturate the vocals and turn the volume down on the saturated vocals, but I'll keep it up just to demonstrate that stuff is happening to the vocals.
I stepped in the room and
I kind of don't want to hear the original right now, so I can stop playing.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me almost instantly. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and I stepped in the room and she noticed me almost instantly.
So this has saturation is a type of distortion. So I'm distorting the voice a bit, but it's a lot. So
I stepped in the room. I stepped in the room and she noticed
is you just turn the volume down. Another thing I've seen when I've listened to the different frequencies in different tracks, I've noticed that people will select a specific frequency range to apply their saturation. And I think I've heard it in multiple songs around 500 hertz.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me almost instantly. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed. I stepped in the room and I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she I stepped in the room and she noticed me almost.
Okay, so that added a little bit of thickness to Mish's vocals. Yeah, so that's just like a nice little thing. What I've done in the past is I've also, before the EQ, pitched it up to make it kind of lighter. So if a vocal is sounding too dull or something,
I stepped in the
which is not happening with Mish. I like the fact that it's adding a bit more bulk to her voice.
I stepped in the room and
I'm just gonna get rid of the instrumental for a second.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me.
So the EQ is making it so that this higher pitched one doesn't sound like too much. And it's really, really artificial, especially since it's Reaper's one. So if you just hear it in isolation without the EQ, it sounds kind of, I mean, it's chipmunky and it's terrible. But in conjunction with the original,
I stepped in the room and she noticed me.
you can't really hear it in its isolated form, but it can add a bit of lightness
I stepped in the room and she noticed me.
without it being piercing because it's in the 500 range.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me.
And if you like this and you also like the previous version, then you can just duplicate the track and just use both. So take off the pitch up.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me.
Almost instant.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me.
Almost instant.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me.
I don't know, something like that could be fine. I probably did too much because I'm too used to how it sounds at this point.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me.
Almost.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me.
I don't know, I'll just go with that. Doesn't matter too much. And then you would do a similar thing to each vocalist. I guess I will. What you can do is copy, so I selected them and then Control C and then paste them farther down. If you copy and paste, it's not going to keep the sends and receives, so what you do, maybe I should label this saturation and then high saturation or pitched saturation. Copy, paste, and then route each vocalist to a different one of these, or you could route them all to the same one. That seems easier, so I'm going to do that.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me.
Almost instantly. And I can guarantee that she
Has heard about me through her girlfriend.
Yeah, I think I would EQ Mara's vocals entirely differently, but I'm just not going to do that. Okay, what is next? Okay, sidechain EQ. Let's see, actually, in the grand scheme of things, how much we've done. We've done all the steps for the mains. So as you can see, once you've done all the stuff for the mains, the harmonies, you can copy the effects from the mains. Because they're in the background, you don't need them to be super personalized. The things that are in the foreground, you want to be doing those special detailed things like adjusting the knobs for their voice in particular. So you would essentially almost be done with the harms too at this point. The next thing I'm going to do is worry about the instrumental. So far we've only really looked at the vocals and how we can change the vocals to fit the instrumental. Now we're going to fix, or rather change the instrumental to adjust to the vocals. So we're going to do another sidechain thing. And the way I do this one, so my instrumental is right here, I muted it for a bit. I route my main vocals to my instrumental. And I go from the main channels to the secondary channels, 3 and 4. And then what I will do is the same dry wet thing. But instead of using the instrumental itself to lower the specific frequencies, I'm going to use the vocals to lower the specific frequencies in the instrumental. So I worried about 300, 1000, and 5000 before. I'll just do that again here. Usually I'd be doing more than just that, and I might end up doing more. But I'm gonna be using that filter that I was using before, the EQ filter.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me.
What we're gonna be doing is separating, or rather, when the vocals are playing, we're gonna reduce how much the instrumental is playing in different frequency ranges. So the instrumental responds to the vocals, and it makes the vocals seem in the foreground, and it allows the instrumental to be what it was if no vocals were playing at all. Like it retains its integrity when there are no vocals. And if you have an instrumental, ideally the instrumental would be kind of perfect as is. So you don't really want it to be changing if there are no vocals. And then once the vocals are in, you push away the instrumental in the right places to kind of make the vocals more legible and just create a clarity and separation. So I'm just gonna listen to the vocals plus the instrumental at 300 hertz. Okay, I'm gonna raise the volume of the instrumental, I think.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me.
Almost instantly, and
I stepped in the room and she noticed me.
Yeah, so I increased the volume of the instrumental more. I think around 300 to 500 hertz, you can have the vocals competing with the instrumental and not being as clear. And that sounds kind of good to me. But you still want the instrumental to respond to the vocals. Oh, I guess I can play more of the music. Because now I'm working not with just Mish's vocals, but with everyone's, well, except for Tomo. So essentially, I want the vocals to kind of be heard. I might be contradicting what I was saying earlier, but just pick what you like the best. Maybe in 300, you don't need the vocals to overshadow the instrumental. Just choose what your preference is. And you want to adjust these EQs so that they react as you would want them to react to the most loud part of the vocals, because they're not going to because I'm sidechaining this, it's going to respond to the vocals eventually. So if only a little bit of vocals are happening, then this is only going to be a little bit wet, so it's only going to decrease these frequencies in the instrumental a little bit.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me.
Okay, I think there's an issue here. I put too much EQ on the instrumental. But I accomplished my goal in a sense. When this is activated, I can hear the vocals more clearly and they're not really competing with anything. However, I think I'm affecting the instrumental a bit too much. So what I'm gonna do is lower the volume of the instrumental and maybe do this process again so that I get lower numbers for my EQ bands. Because, you know, when you have an instrumental, you don't want to change it too much. It should be sounding good as is for the most part.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me. Almost instantly. I stepped in the room and she noticed me. Stepped in the room and she noticed me. Stepped in the room and she noticed me. Stepped in the room and she noticed me.
That number is very large. I'm thinking that's too much, but I'll just go with it. Okay, those numbers are still pretty big. But what you could do is just lower the instrumental volume again until the numbers are where you would prefer them. These actually might just be fine. Okay, so I'm gonna do the side chaining thing. So I routed already the vocals or the mains to the instrumental, and they're going to channel 3, 4. So I'm gonna click on the dry wet knob and then parameter modulation, audio control signal, sidechain. So it's using the vocals to affect the instrumental. I found that maybe A slightly larger attack time is fine.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
Almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
I stepped in the room and she noticed me I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
Has heard about me through her girlfriend.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
Has heard about me through her girlfriend.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
Has heard
Okay, so I think that's pretty good. I thought that with this one, it was way more noticeable when you changed the strength percentage, what the audio difference was than in the past when I did the sidechain. This is one of those things where you're gonna have to come back a different day once your ears are rested to double check your work. So the way that the vocals are affecting the instrumental, you want to double check, or, you know, more than triple check. You want to change, you want to go to the vocals and EQ it again just to double check. I think things that are tonal balance related, so tonal balance is just kind of the shape.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me I stepped in the room and she noticed me
So it's the shape that each of these things are making.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
So I'm noticing that there was a big peak around here, so I might need to lower that.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
A lot of the times you want things to be kind of flat. So maybe tomorrow I would come back or take a break for half the day or something. Oh, well, that's because I put another EQ on it. All right, let's look at it and see what kind of issues it might have just from looking at the shape.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
So I'm kind of noticing a lack of stuff between 1 and 3K.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can
And that might end up being fine because harmonies can go in that range. But for now, I'll just bump this up.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly,
And you want to have the instrumental on when you're doing this.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me I stepped in the room and she noticed me
And you want to compare against songs that you like. But I'm not going to do that right now. But essentially, there's a lot of double checking going on when you do this kind of process on the higher level things. So like the last effect that you put on each track or something. And then you could just keep adding EQs to tracks when you're double checking.
I stepped in the room and she.
Okay, so I've dealt with the instrumental. So the last things are spatial effects and then the master track effects. I guess I didn't show you the harmony, but I kind of kept the settings on the harmonies here from when I actually, oh no, I didn't. Well, anyway, you could just go to where I affected Mara's voice. I have all these effects here. Scroll down to Mara again and just copy and paste those effects on. So Mara's harmonies should now.
Guys don't like me, these guys they don't like.
Maybe not that.
Sometimes to win.
Through with this.
Let me mute everyone else's.
Sometimes to win. You've got to sin.
That one's not.
Fell in love. Oh yeah, I stepped into the club and
Live, not just survive. Fighting till the war's won. Throw away my faith, babe. Just live, not just survive.
So that one's a bit loud, but what I would do to harmonies. Yeah, let's do this real quick. Just talk about what I would do to harmonies that would be different from mains. I would high pass it higher so that the vocals dominate the 500 range. You can get the effect of loud harmonies by making the harmonies loud in a specific range. Lately, I've been doing around 3K. I've been kind of bumping the harmonies and then maybe lowering the mains to compensate. So I put an EQ on the mains, lower 300 here, raise 300 on the harmonies, and I might do a side chain type thing so that when the harmonies are playing, this volume lowers.
live, not just survive.
That's a bit extreme.
Live, not just survive. Live, not just, live, not just survive. Live, not just survive.
Something like that. So I'm gonna just get rid of those EQs, but I would do things like that, and then I'm not really gonna worry about the harmonies for the rest.
Survive. Guys don't like me, these guys they.
Okay, so the next thing then is spatial effects. First thing I'm gonna do is add width. So I'm gonna take the mains and put it in this folder, and I'm not gonna do any sidechaining thing. They're going directly in this folder. So they're kind of doubled right now. And instead of literally doubling it, they're kind of two very simple ways that you can add width to vocals. And then you kind of use that all over the place and add them on top of each other. So the first way actually, I kind of have to mute the mains, but the idea is more simple than the routing. So you have one playing on the right. You have the initial vocals playing on the right, which is track 10. So I'm not going to have any delay on track 10. And then on track 9, what I'm going to do is get rid of the dry signal, put the length down to 0, 0 feedback. and then have this go for 5 to 10 milliseconds. So what's happening is that the main vocals are going to the right ear, and then in the left ear, what's happening is that we're gonna wait a little bit of time, and then it'll play from the left.
Guys don't like me. Guys don't like me. These guys, they don't like me. These
Why is it not playing at all?
guys don't like me. These guys, they
Oh, it's not routed to that track, that's why.
guys don't like me. These guys, they don't like me. These guys don't like me 'cause the girlfriends do.
This is
Guys don't like me. These guys, they don't like me. These guys don't. Guys don't like me. These guys, they don't like me. These guys don't like me.
So that's a nice way of adding width. There is a problem with it, and that's that it sounds like the vocals are coming from one side. So it's not kind of directly in the center. So that's like a really nice effect that you would use generally in music production or mixing. I like to use it for drum cymbals because those typically do come from one side or the other. So that's not even an issue. But for vocals, a lot of the time you want it to come from the center.
I stepped in the room and she noticed.
And here it's coming from the right. So what you can do is make it come from the right and the left. So I'll have the original vocals playing in the center, and then have it delayed on the right and the left by different amounts. So we'll go to 10 milliseconds on this one, or 9.
I stepped in the room.
Yeah, that doesn't really work either.
I stepped in the.
Oh, that's because the dry.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me almost in.
Right, so that made it sound a bit wider. However, it's like it doesn't sound as good as with just the two. And that's kind of an issue with this kind of thing. If you want the vocals to come directly from the center, what you can do is just have 2 takes. Put one on the right and one on the left. And that there are usually no issues with that, as long as the vocals align with each other. In order to deal with this issue, what you do is you just lower the volume of these delays.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me almost instantly. And I can guarantee that she. I stepped in the room and she noticed me almost instantly. And I can guarantee.
So even though it has an artificial quality to it, you don't really hear it because it's too quiet. However, you do get a sense that the vocals are wider. Another thing that you can do is detune, not by a semitone. You want to go by cents, and you don't want to do that many cents. So I'll make one of them go, I'll detune one up a little bit and the other one down a little bit.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me almost in.
This one sounds very artificial as well, but it makes it sound even wider.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me almost instantly. And I can guarantee that she
Has heard about me.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me almost instantly.
Okay, Mara's vocals, I'm just gonna add an EQ on it, because it just sounds...
That she
Has heard about me through.
that she
Has heard about me through her girlfriend.
that
that she
has heard about me through her girlfriend.
that she
Has heard about me through her girlfriend.
Just to match the other
Stepped in the room and she
and I can guarantee that she
Has heard about me through her girlfriend.
and I can guarantee that she
Has heard about me through her girlfriend.
and I can guarantee that she
Has heard about me through her girlfriend.
Yeah, that's not the best fix necessarily, but I think it made her vocals sound a little bit closer to the other ones.
and I can guarantee that she
Has heard
Anyway, so back to width.
almost instantly and I can guarantee that she
Let's take away what I just put on.
almost instantly and I can guarantee that she
Has heard
almost instantly and I can guarantee that she
It's hard to A/B compare because there is like a weird lag thing that happens.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed.
But one is noticeably wider, I would say.
I stepped in the room and she.
And it might be too much.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me.
almost instantly
Another thing that you probably want to do to these is low pass and high pass them. High pass because of random rumbling, but the low pass is there to get rid of the S's entirely so that the S's are not like bouncing around. And you don't want the S's to be wide because you want to kind of hide the S's and stuff as much as possible, because S's are kind of the least aesthetic part of singing, in my opinion.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me.
almost instantly and I can guarantee that she
Has heard about me through her girl.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me.
almost instantly and I can guarantee that she
And then I'm adding gain to compensate for the fact that I got rid of a lot of the vocals there with the low pass. Another thing you can do for width, put all this stuff in another folder so that you're applying effects to both the side channels and the middle one. You can add a chorus type plugin. I'm not sure my chorus plugin is any good, but I have it.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me.
And with all these spatial effects, my advice is to do very little of it.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me.
almost instantly and I can guarantee that she
So you could do that. Ozone Imager.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me.
almost instantly and I can guarantee that she
Has heard about
I stepped in the room and she noticed me.
So this one adds like a really nice width to it. It's very wide, but it is, unfortunately, there's this artificial quality to it.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me.
almost instantly and I can guarantee that she
I stepped in the room and she noticed me.
almost instantly and I can guarantee that she
Has
So I don't really know what it is.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me.
almost instantly and I can guarantee that she
Has heard about me through her girlfriend.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me.
almost instantly and I can guarantee that she
Has heard about me through her girlfriend.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me.
almost instantly and I can guarantee that she
Has heard
I I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
has heard about me through her girlfriend.
So, I don't know, you just mess around with the dry wet of these things. It seems like 30 was fine, but I know that there was some really bad artificial stuff happening the last time I used Imager, so I just want to be a little bit careful.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me.
Okay, so that was width. What we're going to do now is add a bit of chunkiness or thickness. And this is another spatial effects thing. So if we go back here, we've added width, so that makes things spread out left to right. And then chunkiness or thickness. If you've ever heard of slap back, then that's what this is. I have this plugin. You don't really need to do this effect, so maybe I'll just explain how you can do it. Just with a very simple delay plugin. I mean, essentially you're doing what you did with the initial width one, where I had a little bit of delay before playing the one on the right and playing the one on the left, except I'm just going to have it delay before playing again in the center. So turn the dry down, send my vocals to it. So I'll call these wide mains. I'll just call this chunk.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
Has heard about me through her girlfriend.
And then, as with the wide effects, you want to just make this very quiet.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
Has heard about me through.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly.
And then I'm going to duplicate this track. And in the duplicate, I'm going to change the time that it does this by.
I stepped in the room and she
Let me mute the other one so I can tell what's happening.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
So the new one is 40. You just essentially want it to be different than the original one. The original one was 35, so that's good.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
Has heard about me through her girlfriend.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
Has heard about me through her.
Alright, so I'll mute it and then unmute it.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
Has heard about me through her girlfriend.
So without that, it'll sound more thin. Oops. Ah, yes. And then I will add a reverb. Unfortunately, Reaper's reverb is actually quite bad, I think. So I'm going to use this reverb. I don't even think it's... I think it's pretty good at making more of a natural sounding reverb, but I don't know. I feel like I could be doing better, so maybe I need to get a plugin
I
specifically for the reverb. A new one, like I don't know. I've heard good things about Valhalla Vintage Verb.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly.
Right, so I need to send my mains to this. Chunk 2. This will be a short reverb. So I'm gonna turn my decay time quite low. I don't really want it to feed back super much or to last very long, so I could increase the dampening. Let me just play it and mess around with the knob.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly. And I can guarantee that she
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly. And I can guarantee that she
I stepped in the room and
I do want it to be 100% mixed because I'm copying the main vocals into this track. So I don't want to have more main vocals than what's right here. I want this track to just be the reverb part.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly. And I can guarantee that she
I stepped in the room and she noticed me.
Okay, I heard the S just repeating over and over again, so I'm gonna put a high pass on this. If you don't have a high pass on your reverb, just put in EQ and high pass. High cut or low pass.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly. And I can guarantee.
And honestly, with reverb, generally, you don't want it to exist so much in harsher frequency ranges. So I like to do stuff like this with the reverb, and with specific reverbs, you could confine it to specific frequency ranges. So like you could have one that just goes from 1K to 5K or something, or around 500 to 1K. I'm just gonna do from 500 to 5K.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly. And I can guarantee that she
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly. And I can guarantee that she
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly. And I can guarantee that she
Anyway, I'm not going to spend too much time on this.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly.
The main gist I want you to understand is that, I mean, I've already said it, but I'll say it again. When you're doing a spatial effect, I think it's really nice to just do a lot of different subtle things that kind of add up together, then do the same thing to a great extent, because a lot of these ways that you're affecting the vocals create some kind of artificial sound. But when you do a lot of different, when you come from a lot of different angles, what is maintained is the ultimate goal of each of these, which is to create more width or more thickness. And the artificial nature of each of these doesn't stack because they're not the same kind of artificialness.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly. And I can guarantee.
And the volumes on each of these things, you definitely want to double check in a different session. Okay, so that was what you do to make things thick. And then you would add a delay and reverb. And this is more creative. but it adds space. So you would route your main vocals. I'm not sure if you want to also route the thickness folder or anything. You might not even want to route the wide part of the mains. I haven't actually decided on that or tried to figure it out. I just do a thing and deal with the consequences. So you want to do a bunch of different kinds of these things, as with what I've been doing. I think the Reaper delay would work pretty well for this, but there's a preset that I could just choose, ping pong delay.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and
Okay, you can hear the S's bouncing around. And with this one, this is where you kind of want to limit the frequency range a bit more, I think, because ping pong delays, actually like any delays, are really noticeable because you're hearing the word fully formed as it was originally sung.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
So you're not hearing a lot of the consonants anymore. You're not hearing the S. So the things that are bouncing around in your ears are not as intelligible. And it's lacking that like thickness. So which would be around 500 and 300. So that's not bouncing around either. So you kind of have, it gives more of a percussive type of effect without sounding like words.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
But then when you pause the music, it's like, oh yeah, that's definitely there. And then I could use this reverb. And then I think I'll just use another reverb after this one. This is a free reverb. I don't know exactly what's gonna make this reverb sound the best in a general situation. For this particular song, I just went through presets and I just chose the one that seemed to fit the best. It did have issues when I did that, and I did other things to compensate for those issues.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly.
Alright, I want to put this at 100%, the mix at 100% on each of these reverbs. I'm just going to deal with the supermassive one because that one's the one that had the issue, and then use the other one to kind of correct for that issue.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly.
Okay, that's not being routed too, that's why.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee
Again, cutting out the high frequencies, I want to cut out the low frequencies.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly. And
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly. And I can guarantee that she
So the density tells you how quickly the echoes turn to reverb.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly. And I can guarantee that she
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly. And I can guarantee that she
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly. And I can get
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly. And I can guarantee that she
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost.
Okay, I'll add the other reverb.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly. And I can guarantee that she
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly. And I can guarantee that she
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly. And I can guarantee that she
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly. And I can guarantee that she
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly. And I can guarantee that she
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly. And I can guarantee that she
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly. And I can guarantee.
A lot of the times these reverbs are just not even going to sound good at full volume, but when they're really quiet,
I
they can add to the whole thing.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly. And I can guarantee that she
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly. And I can guarantee that she
Okay, there's a problem with reverb generally that you can fix. And that's that the reverb kind of competes with the main vocals. So you want to put it in the background. So I'm going to sidechain again. So when the vocals are playing, I'm going to do something less complicated than EQ. I'm just going to turn the volume down on the delay and reverb when the main vocals are playing so that it separates them more so and puts the main vocals in the foreground and the reverb and delay in the background.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly. And I can guarantee that she
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly. And I can guarantee that she
The main thing that I'm hearing there is the delay, so I'm just gonna...
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly. And I can guarantee that she
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly. And I can guarantee that
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly. And I can guarantee that she
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
So the main vocals are more clear when that effect is active. And then what I'm going to do is put all this stuff in a folder. I'll call it wet names. And then I want to compress everything so that the reverb joins more to the main vocal rather than sounding like a separate thing. And so that the volume of the vocals overall is more consistent. And again, you would probably want to EQ this and compare to a song that you like. Generally, when I EQ with this bus compressor, I'll have one that has a small attack so that it really turns it into a box. But then I'll turn the wet knob down so that it, you know, only a little bit of the boxy vocals is coming through, but it adds a bit of consistency to the vocals. And then I will add another compressor on top of that with a slower attack time that has a more even or slow, smooth way of compressing the vocals. And I'll also have that be somewhat dry. But all of this is to kind of glue the reverb to the main vocals.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she.
I'm trying to make sure that this bar hits 4. I only do this because I've just heard other people say it so much, but I think if it only goes up to 2, that's fine. I've heard issues when it goes up higher than 4. But if you don't hear any issues, then it could go up pretty high. If it adds to your aesthetic, then I don't see why that wouldn't work. It would just sound a bit artificial, I think.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she.
Okay, if I solo the vocals, you'll probably be able to hear that what the compressor is doing is making the reverb louder, but it's not detracting away from the main vocals. If you just increase the volume of the reverb, then it would interfere with the main vocals a bit.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me. I stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
has heard about me through her girlfriend.
It's not my fault she looked at me. It's not your fault. You can't compare.
Are we through with this? 'Cause I do insist nothing happened here this time.
Then I'll put another compressor on it.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
has heard about me through her girlfriend.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly.
I'm gonna go back to this. So what I've done is I've added width, I've added chunkiness, I've added reverb. I've done compression on everything, and I did sidechain compression. I guess I messed up the order of that, but a lot of the times the order doesn't matter super much. And then, oops. And then you would want to EQ it.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me.
And the reason you want to redo it is because because I've high passed and low passed so many of these effects in the reverb, it only boosts that part of the vocal range that isn't high end or low end. And maybe I've boosted certain things more than others. So I kind of want to control that a bit. I exited out of my slideshow, so I need to get back into it. So I would EQ this again.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me. Stepped in the room and she noticed me.
Almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
Has heard about me through her.
Stepped in the room and she noticed. Stepped in the room and she noticed me. Stepped in the room and she noticed me.
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
Has heard about me through her girlfriend.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me.
almost instantly, and
And then you could put soothe. You could honestly put soothe on the vocals at pretty much any step of this process in between other effects.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me.
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
Stepped in the room and she noticed me.
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
Has heard about me through her girlfriend.
And then I think I want to put another de-esser on everything. So you can just click and drag that.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me.
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
Has heard about me through her girlfriend.
It's not.
And then when you put the harmonies and the main vocals together, you do want to compress it again, I think. And maybe put soothe on it again. But you would also copy the reverb stuff that you did on the mains to the harmonies. So you could just click on all this stuff, Control C, copy, and then paste it over to the harmonies. The thing about harmonies is that you can turn the loudness, or you can turn the reverb up, and you can turn the width up, and then you want to decrease the amount of S's, so you could overdo even how your de-essers, and you want to get rid of a lot of consonants sometimes. Because the part of the vocal in the harmonies that doesn't really, that could miss a line from the main vocals is the consonant. Because if you're both doing the same vowel and they're on top of each other, it doesn't matter if it's the beginning of the vowel or the end of the vowel. The only thing you're hearing in that moment is a vowel. But if someone does a D or a T and it's off by just a little bit, you might not be able to time it so that they fit on top of each other nicely. So you could just get rid of the T in the harmony altogether so that the listener only hears the T in the main vocal.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me.
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
Has
And then for the master track, essentially you're just putting the vocals to the instrumental. You're going to compress the two together to glue them a lot like you did with the vocals and the reverb of the vocals, I do essentially these things. I'm gonna be lazy and just copy paste that.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
has heard about me through her girlfriend.
And then you want these to be pretty dry on the master because the effects on the master are going to be very impactful on what you're hearing. So let's see, what do I put on the master? I compress it, I EQ it. You would just EQ it to match. This is where you match with another song very closely, and you, over the course of multiple sessions, listen for the differences between what you have and things that you like. Use various analyzers. So you would use span. You would play what you have.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me.
You would change the time. So you could do a very long time. That's how I checked masters a lot of the time.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
has heard about me through her girlfriend.
So issues that I see are probably this hump right here. Maybe the low end isn't loud enough. Maybe some of these peaks.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
has heard about me through her girlfriend.
And there's like this little valley right here at 7K that maybe you could increase. So what I'll do is I'll increase the low end, but I don't want to increase the very lowest part of that.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
has heard about me through her girlfriend.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
has heard about me through her girlfriend.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
has heard about me through her girlfriend.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
has heard about me through her girlfriend.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
has heard.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
has heard about me through her girlfriend.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
has heard of.
stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
has heard about me through her girlfriend.
It's not my fault she looked at me. It's not your fault, you can't compare. Stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
Has heard about me through her girlfriend.
So tonal balance is something that I don't really understand very well, but it's essentially, in my opinion, you just match your song to a song that you like that sounds very similar, and then there are things that are just a bit off about yours that you just kind of have to tailor to your song. I'm just doing this to make the line more flat. That's kind of a general thing that has worked for me.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
has heard about me through her.
The low end boost that I did might not be necessary. I feel like the kick is too loud, so.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
has heard about me through her girlfriend.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
has heard about me through her girlfriend.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
has heard about me through her girl.
Then I'll just put soothe on the master.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
has heard about me through her girlfriend.
I'll put a saturation on the master because that makes things louder.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
has heard about me through her girlfriend.
You don't really want to make the saturator too much. Even a little bit will do a lot. And it's very easy to do too much. The first however many years I was doing this thing, I always did it too much.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
has heard of.
Actually, I should put soothe after OTT. Sometimes I use OTT, sometimes I don't.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
has heard about me through her girlfriend.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
has heard about me through her girlfriend.
I'm not really sure if I like it or not. I'll just keep it in. Okay, and so now I'll use ozone elements for its intended purpose. We'll go to mid-side. An issue, if you have low frequencies on the sides, that's an issue. So I get rid of those. And then generally adding a very small amount of EQ to the sides on the high end is something to think about.
Stepped in the room and she noticed me
almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
has heard about me through her girlfriend.
It's not my fault she looked at me. It's not your you can't compare.
we're through with this, 'cause I do exist. Nothing happened here this time.
Guys don't like me, these guys, they don't like me, these guys don't like me 'cause the girlfriends do.
Generally, you don't want the number that appears here in small blue. You don't want that number to get above 6 regularly. Or -6 regularly.
It's not my fault she looked at me.
But again, I'm just repeating that number from things that I've watched in the past, and I don't really know why. But generally, I do find that if it does go above 6 a lot, it's just too artificial. And it's generally, I mean, you want to get above a certain threshold of loudness. However, I think it's better to be slightly quieter and just sound better than to necessarily, I have to meet this certain luff threshold and not be flexible about it. I mean, you want to get as close as you can, but you still want to have something that sounds good.
It's not my fault she looked at me. It's not your
Okay, I hear like a big pumping thing, so I think I'm limiting too hard.
It's not my fault she looked at me. It's not your fault. You can't compare.
And you want to hear it at different volumes. In the end, your ceiling is going to be like 0. But you want to hear it quiet. You want to hear it at a middle volume. You don't want to hear it loud, actually, for very long.
It's not my fault she looked at me. It's not your fault. You can't compare.
We're through with this, 'cause I do insist. Nothing happened here this time.
Guys don't like me, these guys. They don't like me, these guys. Don't like me 'cause the girlfriends.
I was still hearing some pumping, and pumping is the effect of a compressor.
It's not my fault she looked at me. It's not your fault. You can't compare.
We're through with this, 'cause I do insist. Nothing happened here this time.
It's not my fault she looked at me. It's not your fault. You can't compare.
We're through with this, 'cause I do insist. Nothing happened here this time.
Guys don't like me, these guys. They don't like me, these guys. Don't like me 'cause the girlfriends do. It's not my fault she looked at me. It's not your fault. You can't compare.
We're through with this, 'cause I do insist. Nothing happened here this time.
It sounds like the vocals are, I don't know, not loud enough. But you don't necessarily want to just increase the volume of the vocals too much.
It's not my fault she looked at me. It's not your fault. You can't.
Because then all the like little EQ changes you made they don't work for you anymore, and things suddenly start sounding detached. So maybe just like a little EQ move will help that, like in one of these ranges.
It's not my fault she looked at me. It's not your fault. You can't compare.
We're through with this, 'cause I do insist. Nothing happened here this time.
It's not my fault she looked at me. It's not your fault. You can't compare.
We're through with this, 'cause I do insist.
It's not my fault she looked at me. It's not your fault. You can't compare.
We're through with this, 'cause I do insist. Nothing happened here this time.
It's not my fault she looked at me. It's not your fault.
And this is something that I would just typically do in a different session. Because right now my ears are very used to the song, because I've been working on it for many hours in a row. Or, I guess, yeah, almost 3 hours in a row. So you just want to come back at a later session, double check all your stuff. Generally, I kind of aim for, I don't know, -7 LUFS when I try to master something. So if it's not there, then what you can do is go through everything, see if you can compress something more without it sounding too bad. See if you can saturate it more. Another thing I will do sometimes on the master is do a very small amount of a low wet amount of clipping.
It's not my fault she looked at me. It's not your fault. You can't compare.
We through with this.
This song doesn't sound too good when it's all fried. But sometimes songs sound a little bit neat when they're like deep fried like that. And then you put the wet at like 1 or 2%. And it can just add a little bit of aggressiveness to your song. And it'll make your song louder, because if you just clipped it, your song would be very, very loud if you clipped it at 100% wetness.
It's not my fault she looked at me.
Okay, I think that was pretty much everything. All right, I think that is up, or that is it. Oh wow, people are actually watching this. None of these chats made it to my eyes. All right, well, thank you for watching. I'm sorry for not being in the chat, but it was supposed to come up, it was supposed to pop up in OBS and it just never did.
It's not my.
Maybe I should just play it all the way through.
I stepped in the room and she noticed me
Almost instantly, and I can guarantee that she
Has heard about me through her girlfriend.
It's not my fault she looked at me. It's not your fault. You can't compare.
we through with this, 'cause I do exist. Nothing happened here this time.
Guys don't like me, these guys. They don't like me, these guys. Don't like me 'cause the girlfriends do. Do-do-do. Do-do-do-do. Do-do-do. The girlfriends.
Stop, let me explain the situation. Everybody hated for the same reason.
Attempted to
If I were talking more about horizontal things, then right at the stop,
Girlfriends.
Stop, let me explain.
you would want to automate some stuff. So I'll just do that real quick, because it can be easy. It can also be very, unfortunately, hard.
The girlfriends.
Stop, let me explain the situation. Everybody hated for the same reason.
attempted to mingle. She said she was single, and I'm just a
They
nice
say
guy.
before you start a war,
She
you
looked
better
at
know
me.
what you're fighting for.
I am through with this, but if you insist, then the next time she's mine.
Guys don't like me, these guys. They don't like me, these guys. Don't like me 'cause their girlfriends do. Do-do-do. Do-do-do-do.
she fell.
Okay, another thing to be wary of is if someone used Melodyne to time and tune, sometimes Melodyne like bugs and syllables will come out, or sibilants or whatever will come out of just one side. So you need to identify where that's happening and make it mono.
Stepped into the club. Stepped into the club.
Okay, I don't know if that's Melodyne or my effects, but that's like a noticeable, there's too much S on the side.
Stepped into the club and she fell in love. Oh yeah, I stepped into the club and she fell in love.
Cause these guys, they don't like me. These guys, they don't like me. These guys, they don't like me. These guys, they don't.
Angel with a
If love's a fight, then I shall die with my heart on a trigger.
They say before you start a war, you better know what you're fighting for.
Wait, that's your girl?
I'm an angel with a shotgun.
Fighting till the war's won. I'll throw away my faith, babe, just to keep you safe. Don't you know you're everything I have? I'm an angel with a shotgun.
Wanna live, not just survive tonight. They say before you start a war, you better know what you're fighting for.
Okay, I don't know how to say goodbye, but I'm just gonna say goodbye. Thanks for watching if you watched.